Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am sharing with you what I read in November. The first book I read on audio, and that was This Accident of Being Lost by Leanne I always trip up her middle name, Leanne Betasamosake Simpson, and it was narrated by the author as well. It's poetry and also stories or short vignettes, little snapshots, and it's very similar in format to her other book, Islands of Decolonial Love, which I absolutely loved. I really, really like this one too. A lot of the stories in this used you, so were addressed to someone. So a lot of them felt like letters, other ones felt more like journals, but they had that kind of intimate feeling to them. The stories all dealt with indigeneity and people on the periphery of society. And I actually think that the second person, the you, contributes to this feeling of someone who's on the periphery because they are kind of on the outside having to direct their thoughts at somebody. And just the tone of it really works for me. These short little vignettes, this style of writing is not my thing at all, but I just love her books. I like how she does it. She just words things in a way that like goes into the core of me and really, it just speaks to me. Her writing just speaks to me. Some of the stories that have really stuck with me are one about this like kind of guerrilla maple syrup tapping group who were going around and covertly tapping maples to make maple syrup. And this is, of course, a traditional practice. And they're having to kind of do it a little bit sneakily because the white people in the neighborhood are suspicious of it. That one was a very interesting take on like community and being outside of your community. There was another story of this Indigenous woman whose daughter goes to ballet class, and I think the story's name was Tidy Bun, and it's this kind of crunchy granola mom who is trying to like befriend her and teach her how to make a tidy bun and like teach her how to be like the best ballet mom or maybe even the best mom. And the intention is good, but there's this undertone of superiority maybe. That one I really liked. And the other story I really thought about a lot was one that the author wrote when she was doing like a writer in residence or writer's retreat. I think it was a writer in residence type of thing. I think it was in Banff maybe, and they were experiencing flooding at the time. So there's this story and it's all flood updates. So it's, day 5 of flooding, day 7 of flooding, and it's just her musings as this flooding is happening. It permeated my soul, and I can't explain what about her writing speaks to me, but it feels so genuine when she's writing something. So the next 2 books are both 5-star books I read for Nonfiction November. I didn't quite get to my last book, like I didn't quite finish it, which was Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. And that's on track to be another 5-star. So I've had a great nonfiction reading month. So the 2 books I read, we're going to start with Between Two Kingdoms by Suleika Jaouad. And the subtitle to this is A Memoir of a Life Interrupted. So this details the author's time after when she was diagnosed with leukemia, and then the years after that. So she was diagnosed, I think, around 21 or 22. She was very young, freshly out of college, just starting her life. And this book is divided into 2 main sections. The first one dealing with her treatment of the cancer and her time being gravely ill and undergoing chemotherapy and a bone marrow transplant. And then the second part of the book is around a road trip that she takes through the United States, where she goes and meets people who wrote to her during her illness. So I guess I should mention, while she was ill, she created this blog, which also turned into a short video series produced by, I can't remember if it was like, but it was like one of these big name papers. And they produced a video series detailing what she was going through. So she had this blog called, I believe the blog was called Life Interrupted. And it was about being a young person with a very serious diagnosis and a young person kind of facing their own mortality. And it detailed her journey through that. It documented her journey through that. And it gained a lot of popularity. A lot of people watched the videos. A lot of people read the blogs. And I believe also maybe she started as a blog and then it was published in that paper. I think that's what it was. It turned into a column of sorts. Anyway, so she got a lot of letters and emails from people around the world, but a lot around the States. And so the last part of the book details her going to visit just some of the many people whose correspondence really touched her, or people that she was just very interested to go and meet. I thought this was excellently written. Given how much of a unique experience this is, I think she does as well as you can to make the reader understand at least just a little bit what this is like. A lot of the things she goes through is very hard to read about. She doesn't really pull any punches. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. And if you're looking for kind of like the inspirational survivor's tale, like, this is not the book. This is a very, very honest portrayal of what going through an illness like this is like. And it's not like inspiration fodder. It is a look at kind of like the really dark aspects of not only going through the disease, but of surviving the disease. She goes into quite a lot of detail about the difficulty of reintegrating into society, and that when you're quote unquote cured, when your cancer is in remission, when you're done your treatment, how you expect to feel like, yay, I beat cancer, great. And it's not like that at all, that you don't know how to be a person in society anymore. And that's where the title of the book comes from. She talks about the kingdom of the well and the kingdom of the unwell, and how you're kind of stuck between these two places. And even when the cancer's gone, you never really feel like you're entirely in the kingdom of the well again, because there are always these bits that are kind of trapped in the kingdom of the unwell. I'm not doing the book justice trying to explain this, but she just does a phenomenal job wading through those difficulties. Like I said, it's very honest, including talking about things that don't exactly paint her in the best light either. And I just really appreciated how honest she was, not only about grievances with, other people or with the medical system, but how she handled herself, and that she doesn't think she did everything the right way necessarily, although it's completely understandable why you wouldn't in the situation. Obviously, the book is all her point of view, but I appreciated that she tried to give the full picture as much as she could. The next book I read for Nonfiction November was another 5-star, and that was Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, stories from a South African childhood. This is a series of stories from his childhood through to his early adulthood. So Trevor Noah was about 5 or 6 when apartheid ended in South Africa. So he grew up in this very interesting, very bizarre time in South African history, where when he was born, it was a crime for his parents to have had a child because his father is white and his mother is black. And that was punishable by up to 5 years in prison. And so his very existence pointed to a criminal act. And that's what really was kind of over their heads in his early childhood. Then apartheid ended, but then things were really weird. You have a society trying to reintegrate or to join together to end this separation. And I mean, that's not smooth sailing. And so his life story is in this very interesting, very weird time in history. I love Trevor Noah's voice and his perspective, and the tone of this was just perfect for me. It deals with some heavy things. His childhood wasn't exactly the easiest, but he does it with he intersperses some levity, and of course there's a lot of humor in this because he's a comedian. He didn't try to exactly downplay the serious things, but everything feels very balanced, and I think the humor helps you digest some of the information in this book. He talks about a lot of things, but some of the things that just I found particularly interesting were, first of all, his take on like racism, because racism in South Africa during this time was very specific, and it really points to the absurdity of racism, not just how like white people would hate black people, but how some black people would like hate like mixed race people, and how different tribes of black people, of like native South Africans, would hate other tribes. And this was all contrived by white colonists to make different tribes hate each other. Like, how orchestrated this system was and how purposeful the racism was is awful, but also very interesting to learn about. And he has some very, I think, like astute observations to make about racism in other places of the world versus racism in South Africa. He also says some really, I think, interesting things about criminality, about crime, and different like levels of crime. And crime is seen, depending on your circumstances where you grew up, as seen as a very black and white issue, that either something's illegal or it's not. And that living in this area at this time, you learn that crime is not just crime. There are different levels of crime. There's like the real criminals who are, killing people or hurting people. And there's the not so bad criminals who are like him, pirating things, stealing things, or selling things they're not supposed to. And it's just like a way of life and just kind of accepted. Like, it's a crime, but you don't really think of yourself as a criminal. And it kind of goes back to the title of the book. His existence was a criminal act. And so when you grow up with that kind of understanding of crime, then you grow up with the understanding that, well, some things that are deemed crime is just stupid. Another thing I really loved about this is that it's a bit of a love letter to his mother. It's obvious that he has like great respect for his mother and how she was able to raise him under these circumstances. And I mean, his mother is tough as nails and a little bit off her rocker. Like, not in that sounds kind of mean, but like, this wasn't like an accident. Like, she purposefully had a mixed race child at a time when she knew that was a very dangerous thing to do, and she was putting them all at risk doing it. But she just thought, well, this is stupid. This rule is stupid, so I'm not going to listen. She has this kind of like spirited, like rebellious nature that you really grow to love, even though you're kind of like, what are you doing? And so I just love the way that he talked about his mom in this book. The last book I finished in November was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. This is a science fiction novel. It is very fast-paced, plot-driven book. And while there's a lot of science in this book, if you don't understand the science, I don't think it hampers the reading experience necessarily. I think this book is much more about the story and the plot of this character trying to save Earth. I think the author tried really hard to make the science make sense as much as possible. I don't think he always succeeded. I do think it's more grounded in science than maybe some other science fiction books are, but he really pushes the boundary on what is believable. But he obviously did his research to try to make it make as much sense as possible. I think where he fails a little bit at that is the biological stuff. So there's a lot of like physics in here, and I can't really speak to that. It seemed to make mostly sense to me, but physics isn't really my forte. Biology is. I do have a master's in biology, and specifically my background is in ecology and evolution. So like, I know a lot about that. And the stuff dealing with like biology, like biological species and like evolution didn't always make the most sense. However, I feel like this is one of these books where I can kind of forgive it for those little details. I don't think that really hampers the story at all, because the story is supposed to be this gripping tale of this person trying to continually solve problems and trying to get to a solution to save humanity, essentially. When there is a good story, it's easier to gloss over things that where you have to suspend your disbelief a lot. Whereas you can have a bad story that has perhaps less issues, but you notice them more because they're not in service to a good story. And I think this is a good story. I think it's fun. I could envision the movie as I was reading this. I'm like, yeah, this would make a really fun movie. The writing is nothing spectacular. This is very like commercial fiction. I don't mean that in a like derogatory way, but there's nothing, the writing doesn't really elevate anything. The writing is utilitarian. It's there to just tell you what happens. The magic is in the plot and in wanting to find out how this person is going to save the world. I don't really want to say exactly what that entails because so much of this book is around finding out little bits of information as it goes along. How it starts is this, the main character, Ryland Grace, wakes up. You kind of know at the beginning that he's in a spaceship. He doesn't realize that right away. But like when you open the book, the very first page is like a diagram of the spaceship and how it works. And so obviously he's on a spaceship. But he wakes up, he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't even really remember his name. He remembers skills, so he can still like, he'll understand like a math concept and he'll be like, oh, I wonder why I know that. Maybe I'm a scientist. And so as he's waking up from what we assume is like a long sleep or like suspended animation or something, he wakes up from that and he can't really remember a lot. And so it's really a plot device so that the reader is learning information as he's learning it. But I think that made it really fun. So he wakes up in the spaceship. He doesn't know why he's there. And he starts to remember things and you slowly understand why he's there. He's there to save the world from something. And as you can imagine, if you are on a very, very important mission in space by yourself, things go wrong and obstacles keep coming in his way and he keeps having to problem solve and figure out how to get to the next step. If you need beautiful writing, I wouldn't recommend this book. If you need like a deeper like characterization, I wouldn't recommend this book. But if you are fine with things that are plot driven, with things that are focused on getting the story from A to B to C to D, then I would recommend this. I think it was a really fun read. It's a little bit corny in places, which at certain times made me roll my eyes, but I kind of just got over the corniness because the story was just so much fun. How many times can I say the story was fun? Also very tense though. Like there were times when I was like, how is he going to get himself out of this jam? And you are not really confident through a lot of this, like how the story is going to end. So that was the last book I read, which rounded out a really great reading month for me. If you've read any of these books, I would love to have a chat with you in the comment section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll chat soon. Take care. Bye.